Of your really great meal is your taste buds, and then maybe your brain that's trying to figure out how you can get a little bit more of the great meal that you just had. But what makes your belly feel happy about a great meal that you just had is, in fact, that you can't feel anything in your belly, right? It should be a totally silent organ system that functions in the background, and you don't feel you can tell that you're chewing, but you shouldn't really feel the food going down or your stomach sloshing or things getting either moved along or stuck in your intestines. The secret somehow to a happy belly is a quiet belly. And that's actually the talk for tonight, something about a quiet belly. And this is a okay, maybe you're not going to work. Okay. That works, but this doesn't. Okay, I'll do it this way. Okay, we'll do it that way. So this was a crowdsourced topic. We put out the topic to the audience and to people on Facebook, what would you like to hear about? And the most frequently mentioned topic was something about lifestyle and what you eat and how that makes your brain healthy or not. And I thought, what I'd really like to talk about, and in fact, I'd like to write a book about it, because tonight's topic is kind of an overview through the subject. It's like, what are the lifestyle choices that we make every day that can make our bellies really happy, quiet, operating in the background, that lead then to a healthy brain? Because there's an incredible connection between your belly and your brain, and we're going to go over and over that half a dozen times tonight in different ways. For anyone who hasn't been to any of these talks before, this is the last in our 2018 series. They've been free monthly talks here at the Smolin Center, and we'll start again in January. And it'll again be the third Tuesday of the month at 6 o'clock. And we cover a broad range of topics. They're always free. They're always open to the public. You can bring whoever you'd like. There will be some talks that will be an overview, a recap of everything that we've talked about before. And we'll keep throwing in new talks, too, like tonight's. Like I thought about a week ago, this would be a really great thing to talk about. And then about half an hour later, I thought, I've never given this talk before. So I spent a lot of time on the airplane going to Denver this weekend, reading things that I'd been saving for years about this topic and trying to get them all together in a coherent talk. So our real interest in this series is Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's being the most frequent of the dementias. Dementia being what happens when your brain stops being able to make good memories. You can't make a memory of what happened today so that you can talk about it tomorrow. And while you're sitting here, you can't really remember what you did yesterday afternoon. That's the beginning of dementia. With Alzheimer's, which it accounts for about 2/3 or 3/4 of all dementias, the way that happens is particularly characteristic. And it's described here. The Alzheimer's brain loses the ability to process information in a useful way. So the Alzheimer's brain doesn't make memories so well, and it can't retrieve them so well. But there's more to it than that in Alzheimer's. So in our brains, we have this wonderful cycling of two neurotransmitters. And one of them I think of as glutamate. I have a lot of glutamate in me right now. It's the Energizer Bunny. It's excitement and focus and interest and busyness. That's glutamate, and that's great. But if I have too much of it, I get anxious and frazzled, and I don't know what's going on. So really what a healthy brain should do is cycle from glutamate to GABA. And GABA is really calm and gentle, and GABA calms down glutamate. And the Alzheimer's brain loses the ability for GABA to calm down glutamate. Particularly, which makes that disorder Alzheimer's, is that as the brain starts to deteriorate and lose its ability to normal function, your body slaps amyloid onto the wounds in the brain. And I think of amyloids, and I've referred to it several times, as a Band-Aid. And imagine you had a cut on your arm, and you slapped on a Band-Aid. That would be a really great thing. And a lot of our brains do that. If there's something going not quite right in our brain, we'll put on a little amyloid. But if we've got a really healthy brain and we don't have Alzheimer's disease, we'll have a better day tomorrow and we'll think it could heal and we'll take that Band-Aid off. Alzheimer's is more the tendency when there's an injury to the brain to slap on a steel cast. And that's tangles of amyloid. That's amyloid that reproduces itself into big clusters and makes the neurofibrillary tangles that then are scars that the brain has a hard time recovering from. So that's the particular pattern we see in Alzheimer's disease that we can influence if we have a healthy gut. So let's talk about how we do that. Oh, before we do that, so I'm struck by this slide. So as the brain gets damaged in Alzheimer's disease, parts of the brain in here actually disappear, and the spaces between normal brain tissue expand, and the brain itself contracts. And compare that with a healthy brain. I want you to look at this nice pattern of folds, and it almost looks like a twisted tube of brain matter, but it's not. It's just, how the brain folds in and of itself so it can have a greater amount of surface area and have more nerve cells in your brain to do everything you want it to do. That's the brain of a healthy person. But just sort of have this image in your mind right here and save it. Hold on to that thought. So we're going to talk about the digestive system and the gut-brain connection. And those connections are complex. There's a lot of them. And the first thing you can imagine is that, of course, when you eat, your brain absorbs nutrients. Protein, fat, sugar, vitamins, all sorts of things, and uses them as food for your body. And your brain is the hungriest organ in your body. More than any other part of your body, it needs the fuel that comes from your digestive system. The other thing that circles in this pattern are immune cells. So if there's anything amiss, anything going wrong, some spoiled deviled eggs from a too late picnic or an actual virus, something in your gut, it stimulates immune cells that actually show up as activation within the brain. So when you have something going on and infectious in your gut, it happens in your brain too, and we'll talk a little bit about how that happens and how you can slow it down. There are nerves that connect the brain and the belly, and there are, in fact, the longest nerve in the body goes from the brain, one long nerve, all the way down to the intestines, and it's called the vagus nerve. I guess actually there's longer nerves that go down to your feet, but this is the longest nerve in one particular nervous system. We have two nervous systems, the move nervous system and the keep everything healthy inside nervous system. And that inside nervous system, this long nerve that goes from here down to here, is called the vagus nerve, and messages go both ways from the vagus nerve. So when my gut is busy, if I'd eaten a big meal right before I came here, what kind of message would it send to my brain? Calm, right? Or sleep. How do you feel if you eat too much dinner? You feel really sleepy, and so it sends that kind of message back by the vagus nerve. It tells the vagus nerve, we are so busy digesting food, shut down that brain so she doesn't try and do anything else. And in the opposite direction, and this is really important, and I'm going to talk about it probably 5 times tonight, the messages that go from your vagus nerve help your gut to work well. So you can imagine that you could decide to have lunch by getting in your car. In fact, She ate all her meals in her car. I think she was a traveling nurse, and she ate all her meals in her car. And some of them were through drive-throughs, some of them were through things she bought at home. Imagine how ready her body was to digest compared to somebody who makes a nice dinner, sets a table. It can be really, really simple. It doesn't have to have a tablecloth. And they sit down at their dinner and they go, oh, what a day I've had. I'm so glad to be home. I'm so glad to be eating this simple meal tonight. Guess whose gut is better able to digest their food and do good things with it. And then depending on how well you digest your food, you send messengers back to the body in different ways. And one of the messages that we see that happens from a disordered gut is the message to get fatter, get diabetes, get depressed, and get Alzheimer's disease. So you want your gut to work harmoniously so it doesn't send signals like that back to the rest of your body. But a stressed digestive system can do all those things in a way that we don't want. Let's look more carefully at the digestive system. It's pretty amazing. It starts, it really kind of starts a little bit in your nose. Yeah?
So, if the vagus nerve is damaged, it doesn't send the correct messages to the stomach. Does the stomach still send messages back? Or is it...
And I think that would, so the question is, if the vagus nerve is damaged, like someone who's had a traumatic brain injury or something else, and it's not sending messages to the gut to work in a nice, smooth way, do messages go back the other way? And I'm sure there's injuries that are on one, the answer would be one way, and injuries that are the other way. Janice, were you just waving your hand for her? Thank you. So, your digestion starts a little bit in your brain. You think about what you're going to have, and your nose. Can you smell what you're going to eat? How many people's sense of smell has gotten a little worse as they've gotten older? Right? So something important for smell and taste is the absorption of the mineral zinc, which is also going to come up on another slide tonight. It's harder to absorb zinc as you get older. Zinc's really important for that part of your digestion. And you chew the food and it goes down and your digestive system sits between your lungs there, tries not to bother them too much, your stomach, and right after the stomach, the food goes into your small intestine, but it goes by your liver and your gallbladder. You don't have to remember these things, but it is just, it's beautiful and intricate and complicated. And it's a long and winding road. But it's also just a tube, a long tube with two doors in it. There's a door up here that lets things into the tube, and a door down here that lets things out of the tube. Okay, doesn't that look a little bit like the brain from that other slide? That's why I was thinking it's pretty remarkable that the small intestine actually looks like the brain. So the intestinal system is one long tube, and this is important to remember. Your digestive system is outside your body. Here is outside your body. Here is outside your body. This is inside your body. This is where your circulation works and your nerves travel. What happens in here? You're the host to it, but it's not actively, this cavity, to get this cavity to work well, it's important to remember that it's outside your body and it needs to stay that way. We can let things in or out of the tube, and how we handle them within the tube has a lot to do with how that tube affects the workings of the rest of the body. And the contents of that tube are, and I think we all kind of know this, it's the food that you've brought in and you've chewed, and at the other end, it's the waste product that you flush down the toilet. And in between are kind of all the intermediate stages and what? Lots of good bacteria. So probiotics that are nourishing different parts of the digestive tract, and they're different every step along the way, and we'll talk about those. But what we know from an overall overarching point of view is that the bugs inside our guts, what we call our microbiome, can do all these things. They are really good guys who can kill off bad guys. So when you eat a spoiled deviled egg at a picnic, you can rely partly on your good digestive gut bacteria to help fend off something that might be infectious from what you get from outside. Our bacteria feed our immune system. They encourage the production of white blood cells that we need throughout our body. They actually enable us to absorb nutrients. If we didn't have some of the bacteria we have, we could be deficient in B vitamins. They help us absorb those, and they help us in other ways absorb some of the minerals that we eat. This is one of the most important things that our bacteria does, and really, we could talk about this for an hour. So these little critters make mucus. Not too much. That's when you get like ulcerative colitis or something that's really mucousy and diarrhea. But just the right amount of mucus, so there's a gentle coating of the lining of the intestines that is an immune barrier that helps guard that inside of your body from the outside of your body. And then as we talked about, the microbiome, they help your vagus nerve communicate with your brain and give your brain messages to be healthy, to be quiet, to be lively, to be sleepy. We need our microbiome to do all these things. So if we want to keep our microbiome healthy, we can follow 3 basic principles. So the lining of this tube is bacteria. They're a harmonious community. We want them to be happy. So in general, that means when we clean things, our skin, our mouth, anything that could possibly come in contact with our digestive tract, we want to do it really carefully. And we'll talk about what that means in the different parts of the digestive system. If there's something broken, we want to fix it with natural means. So if you find that you're not digesting your food very well, one of the simplest things you can do is what we talked about approaching your dinner, not as if you're rushing through a drive-in, but as if you're sitting down to a really lovely meal that you've prepared and you've relaxed for, with yourself, with somebody else, with a tablecloth or not, it doesn't matter. That's kind of catering to the nature that you want your vagus nerve to be working and helping you digest your food when you eat. And there's examples like this at every part of the digestive tract, how we can use nature and not big pharma to fix our digestive problems. And you always want to think that these bugs are actually hungry little critters too. You want to feed them well and keep them happy. So the first point of entry to things in your gut is actually your skin. And you want to clean your skin gently and not chemically. So this is pretty interesting because you've probably heard there's been a lot of attention recently to triclosan, the bacterial hand washer that you can get when you get your shopping cart at the store sometime. I got onto the plane yesterday and the woman next to me pulled out all these wipes and she wiped down everything in the plane and looked at me and said, "Do you want wipes?" I said, No. I have my antioxidants. I'll take those instead. And I mean, it was cute that she did it, and I'm sure she didn't have triclosan. But what we've found out about these antiseptic hand washes, the ones that are chemical, not natural, is not so much that they disrupt the microbiome. That was the fear, that triclosan was so potent that it was going to be killing some of our bugs. But what it really turns out is that it's a hormone disruptor. And it comes into your body kind of like an estrogen, which a lot of chemicals do, and then it just sets off the wiring and the messaging in a way that is not the way you want it to be. So when you clean your hands or your body, pretty simple soaps. Soap, and if you even need soap, what do you need soap for? If you're not a day laborer, water does for most things. And natural products, cleaning your body, cleaning your house, and the nutrients that are important to keep your skin healthy. And you want to keep your skin healthy. So the lining of the gut is an important barrier to the inside of the body. But if the gut is a long tube, the skin is just the outside of the tube. So you can think of the skin as a little bit like the outside of your digestive system. And these nutrients, vitamin A, zinc, and healthy fats, are really important for your skin. And where do you get vitamin A? Half of you can get vitamin A from carrots, maybe about 60% of you. Turns out with my genes, I can only get vitamin A from the butter that I melt on the carrots. There's other purposes to the carrots, but can you get vitamin A from vegetables, or do you need to get it from animal products? So butter, egg yolks, liver, carrots, yellow and orange vegetables for those of you who have the gene that enables you to convert that to active vitamin A. Zinc, we talked about. A zinc deficiency is why a lot of people as they get older lose their sense of smell or their sense of taste. Zinc is harder to absorb as we get older, needs a really healthy digestive tract. Zinc is prevalent in animal foods and present in some mineral foods, in some vegetable foods, like pumpkin seeds, and other in smaller amounts in vegetable nutrients and greater amounts in animal nutrients. And then healthy fats, and we've talked about that a lot at these other talks. Coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, and not the industrial fats like canola oil or even safflower, sunflower, seed oils, any of those other oils, not so good. So the first real entry to your digestive tract is this mouth that the man with the healthy belly is showing us. And your mouth does a lot of good things for you. And actually smiling is probably the first thing that's good that your mouth does that's good for your digestive tract. Again, relaxing, being in a good harmonious relationship with the world, good for your digestive tract. But this is an interesting thing that I learned a couple years ago when I got interested in brain health. Chewing is really good for your brain. It's really good for your brain in two ways. It's really good to chew your food thoroughly and to take a while doing it. How many times did your mother tell you to chew each bite?
30 times.
30 times. We had the same mother. I have in-laws who chew each bite 50 times. They're in pretty good health for their advanced age. So chewing your food thoroughly and slowly is a really good idea. But the thing that I learned recently is that chewing with vigor is actually good for your brain. Chewing hard things, chewing carrots, chewing nuts, chewing meat stimulates the production of something called brain-derived neurotropic factor. Woo! It just means it stimulates your brain to make something that encourages your brain to feed itself. So chewing is great. You've also heard me talk at some of these talks about the importance of women in menopause taking hormone replacement if they need it. And one of the indications for hormone replacement in older women is gum disease, because estrogen keeps your gums healthier, which enables you to chew, which enables you to keep your brain healthier. So that's a circuit that is completed that way. And finally, you have bacteria in your mouth. You have, again, a colony of bacteria. Anybody that's medical in this room knows there's something often said, if you've ever worked in an emergency room, that the dirtiest bite is a human bite. You get a human bite, you have to do some serious cleaning. And how do you get a human bite? Actually, this is a funny thing. I remember in my residency where they said, oh yeah, this guy sustained a human bite to his knuckles. I said, well, who bit his knuckles? He said, the guy he punched, And that's how most people actually get a human bite to the hand, is by colliding it with somebody else's teeth. So any animal that's a forager of any sort, so probably vultures are worse than us. Any animal that's a forager uses these bacteria as a defense against bad bacteria in what they might eat. So this is a pretty fulsome collection of bacteria that work fine up here, and you want to keep them healthy. You don't want to introduce them under your skin, but you want to keep this bacteria healthy. And you want to clean them gently too. So what does cleaning the mouth mean? Again, it's mechanical, just like you can wash off your skin with water. You wash off your mouth with water and mechanical things. So who's a flosser? What's that water pick? How many people floss? How many people floss more than once a day? Whoa, I am impressed, okay? You know, the dentist says once a day is enough, but for this actual little part of the lecture, and for when we have Alzheimer's patients who have trouble maybe of an inflammatory nature, we ask them to floss every time they eat. How many people use a water pick? Just as good, you know, just mechanically moving those things around your gums. If you have bad breath and you watch television, you'd think that you have like a Listerine deficiency or like I don't even know what the other brands are, but those are all way too powerful antiseptics. There's a tradition, is there anybody in the audience who's ever done oil pulling? I knew some hands were going to go up there. So oil pulling is an ancient technique that I believe is Ayurvedic. And I think the way people primarily do it now, or at least everybody I know that does it with coconut oil. You get up first thing in the morning. You take 2 tablespoons of coconut oil in your mouth, and you're going to enjoy that coconut oil for about 20 minutes. You're taking a shower, you're walking the dog, you're making your bed. You're swishing that coconut oil all around your mouth. I've had people tell me that it definitely helps with bad breath or infections in their gums. It's helped people with sinus infections and middle ear congestion as well. So that is a great way to clean your mouth. It's funny to do it. I can see some people making faces, but it's effective. It's one of these things that really you just get in the habit of doing it, and it's effective. The most important thing to keep your mouth healthy is to not put food that can rot into your mouth. And sweets rot. You know, in the presence of bacteria, sweets ferment, whether they ferment in your gut or in your mouth. So apples are sweet, but they have some redeeming characteristics. Cotton candy has no redeeming characteristics. And there's some things in between apples and cotton candy that, you know, we could take out of our diet. The people in my office today were huddled down below their desk, and I said, "What are you guys doing?" And they said, "We're sneaking donuts." They weren't. And they still work for me. No. This bacteria in the mouth has gotten a lot of attention recently because there's been a suspicion that the inflammation that's generated in many older mouths has effects beyond the area of the mouth. So of the bacteria that can grow in our gums, there's one kind in particular called Porphyromonas gingivalis that is a really sneaky critter. When it exists in your mouth, all it does is wreak havoc. It causes inflammation and ferments in a bad way, but it's very smart. It knows how to avoid the immune system in your mouth. Like you'll have things there trying to take out other bad bacteria, but it will not take out P. gingivalis. And in the brain of Alzheimer's patient, they found P. gingivalis in the brain. So what does that mean? That means that it was abundant in the mouth. Did I say they found it in the mouth? They found it in the brain under the amyloid plaques. It traveled in the bloodstream through the blood-brain barrier. Our brain has a nice barrier to try and keep random bad guys from our bloodstream from going into the brain. But P. gingivalis can break through that blood-brain barrier, cause inflammation in the brain, and draw amyloid plaques in an Alzheimer's patient to the brain. So it's created a leaky blood-brain barrier and encouraged amyloid. So all those things can cause, obviously, even more problems. The other thing P. gingivalis can do is it can be kind of a ringleader, that you can have bacteria that aren't acting so badly, but if P. gingivalis starts to make a socket, a nasty infection in your gums, it can kind of summon other bacteria and activate them. And the way to get rid of this guy is not with mouthwashes or antibiotics, but by having fewer sweets in your mouth, flossing, rinsing, keeping your mouth clean. So swallowing really matters. After you chew your food, you swallow it. And if you're having a meal that you really like and you chew it well, you're going to swallow better. You're going to have a calm attitude about it and take your time. And, I'm sure you've all had the experience of not having enough water when you want to swallow your food, and maybe you've had the experience of having too much water. So it's important to have some liquids with your meal, but not too many, and really allow that swallowing to happen without you really thinking about it. And it becomes a real problem for some people. Choking is a terrible problem, and that's probably more true in, there are a fair number of brain injuries that have trouble with swallowing. But those of us without that brain injury can still pay attention to our swallowing. And the kind of problems we can have if swallowing goes amiss is we can have heartburn, a purple pill deficiency, right? Or belching or bloating. Those things are noise from your digestive system, and your digestive system is supposed to be silent and operating behind the scenes. So when those things happens, you have to find what a nature way of fixing that would be. So I left work early today, and I was home this afternoon, and what happened when I'm home in the afternoon happened. It always happens. I'm sitting there working at my computer. My dog's sleeping. If you know my dog, you know she's always sleeping, and she's always in the corner over there, and it's like 4:20, it's 4:25. At 4:30, she gets up and walks over to me and looks up at me, because 4:30 is dinner time. So what she does after dinner, this dog who always sleeps, is goes for a walk around the property. And this would be a great thing for us to do after we have a meal, is to take that evening constitutional and go for a little walk. That won't calm all digestive problems, so there's some other things we can do. Sometimes people really need a simpler diet for that upper part of their gut to work well, and it can mean that they have to have fewer carbohydrates, maybe, less bread, less starchy food, or a low FODMAP diet, and I'll show you on the next slide what FODMAPs are. The L-glutamine is an amino acid. It's the most prevalent amino acid in the body that you've never heard of. And it's by far the most prevalent amino acid in the gastrointestinal tract. And if anything's going wrong in your gut's going to need more L-glutamine to heal that problem. So it's a nice thing to have in your first aid cabinet. If you feel a little heartburn, if you're belching, if you feel a little nauseated, just sometimes taking a little bit of L-glutamine can make that problem sit down and behave. So FODMAPs are foods that ferment, and they're different kinds of sugars. And so they're called this, and they're fructo, oligo, di, mono, and polysorbitol, something like that. It's the sucroses in their different forms that are hard for different people to digest, and not everybody reacts to all of them. But if you're somebody who has an upper gut, gee, I burp and belch a lot, this is not a silent part of my digestive system, it'd be good to try some time completely without fructose. It'd be good to try some time without lactose. Fructans, you may not recognize, but you certainly recognize wheat, garlic, olives, and then inulin is a prebiotic, a digestive aid if you tolerate it well, and a digestive irritant if you don't. Legumes, and this one is so sad. Stone fruits. So wonderful summer fruits are summer's not a good time to try and eliminate FODMAPs. We're in the fall now, so if you want to go on a FODMAP-free diet, it's a little easier when there aren't peaches ripe. And those sugars, the xylitol, sorbitol, erythritol. So my wonderful fish oil that I have in the office, I know how many of you have tried it. It really does taste like key lime pie. It really doesn't come back up. It really does have an all sugar in it, sorbitol. And so some people can't take it for that reason. Other than that, it's really a great fish oil. You don't forget to take it. So the next step down is your stomach. You also want to be really good to your stomach because it works really hard for you. So you start breaking down the food with your teeth, but a lot of the breaking down happens in your stomach with stomach acid and with the Even if you don't feel it, your stomach has waves of muscular activity that rotate the food on itself and keep exposing the food to the stomach acid and the digestive enzymes and mixing things up. And then your stomach starts the process of the absorption of some of the vitamins and minerals that you're going to absorb as you go down the digestive tract. And you keep your stomach happy by warning your stomach that food is coming. So that nice approach to your meal, that thorough chewing, isn't just for your mouth, it's also to help your stomach work better. Your stomach acid is a good thing. So if you have stomach acid that's horribly burning your gut, it's fine and a temporary means to stop your body from making stomach acid or to take a pill that will neutralize it. But your stomach acid is really your friend. The whole stomach acid paradigm is kind of interesting. So how many people have ever seen a heartburn commercial? Right? Like, you'd think from watching television at night that the United States had a terrible problem with indigestion and impotence, and that is it. Other than that, we don't need anything. So the indigestion problem, they say you have too much stomach acid and you need to block your stomach acid. But I would say in general that the youngest people in this room are the ones that have the most stomach acid, and us older folks make the least, but we're the ones who get heartburn. It's not a stomach acid problem. It's a dysregulation of this whole movement that's supposed to go from the top down, this long tube. So everything we can do to enhance this downward movement is what's going to help our stomach acid not be a problem, not getting rid of the stomach acid because we need it. And just like my dog likes to eat at 4:30 every afternoon, it would actually serve us well. Have you heard the term circadian rhythm? That's our connection to the rising of the sun and a 24-hour period. Our bodies really like that. Your body would really like it if you ate your meals at the same time every day, and after eating one meal that you went a long time before you ate anything else, so that you space your meals well and that you time them at roughly the same time. Your stomach would really like that. So I learned in making this talk how to draw on a slide. I have room for improvement, but it's not bad. So we talked about how your digestive system is this really long tube, and that's a mouth, and that's an esophagus and a stomach. And the next part I want to talk about is these intestines and your colon. And this is to signify that I'm going to make a cross-section, and we're going to look at this cross-section of your gut, and this is the inside of that's inside your gut that, remember, is really outside your body. And then you have a single layer of cells, which we're going to look at in greater detail, and right next to them are blood vessels, one cell away from whatever is in here. And, okay, this is my best picture. This is your gut contents. You know, that starts with your really healthy breakfast of eggs and broccoli. And here, the eggs and these are the cells, a single layer of cells, endothelial cells that are lining your digestive tract. Each of these is just one cell. They have little expansions on the top that give them more ability to attract and digest nutrients, but they won't take in this whole egg. It has to be broken down by all these cute little bacteria, and then it goes through either right through the cell like this. I mean, some things can go right across the surface of the cell, but how a lot of things come into the bloodstream as nutrients is they go between these cells, and these little hairs, I got tired of drawing the little hairs, but you know, they connect to the two cells, but they can open up, make more space between the cells, and they can filter out things that don't belong. So it's a whole well-orchestrated process. But the thing that's really amazing, okay, this is food. This at the other end is supposed to be your bowel movement before it happens, okay? So it goes down the road. And that is just one cell away, all your fecal waste from your bloodstream that connects to every part of your body. So you need to keep this cell layer really healthy so this stuff, partially digested food, undigested food, fecal material, and bacteria don't cross into the bloodstream. I mean, that's pretty important. It's a pretty delicate balance that keeping a healthy gut will help you keep healthy and keep it working. Because it's got to do a lot of things. That those little cell walls absorb nutrients from their different surfaces. They actually make nutrients in interaction with the probiotics in the food. They can synthesize some vitamins. This is where the immune system really comes from when we talk about it coming from the gut. So your immune system, you've probably heard, somebody looks at your blood test and they say, oh, your red blood cells are pretty good, but your white blood cells are kind of high, or they're kind of low, or they're just right. And the most frequent white blood cells are called lymphocytes, and most of them are made by the lining of your gut, by this harmonious relationship you have down in your abdomen. And then all sorts of neurotransmitters and hormones. Serotonin, the hormone the neurotransmitter that people try and boost by taking Prozac or Paxil or something like that, that's made in your gut. Tryptophan is made in your gut. And the hormones that can come from your gut and encourage you to get obese or get diabetes can be made there not because of how much you're eating, but because of the way your food interacts with your intestinal system. So when things go wrong here, and of course sometimes you know what's going wrong in your colon, right? You have cramping, you have diarrhea, you have constipation. There's one other thing that you can have. There's probably many other things, but there's one other thing I want to talk about, but it's not so obvious. But when you know something's going wrong in your colon, you can take pretty simple steps. You can rest your gut. It's so amazing how often, I know a bunch of veterinarians, and vets always use fasting. Oh, your dog's not feeling so well. Take her off her food for a day or so. When has your doctor ever said that to you? Unless you're my patient. But, it's fine for your body to go a day or so without eating. And you do it yourself when you get a nasty stomach bug, right? You just know you should stop eating for a while. Or you can go on a gentler diet. In general, probiotics are completely safe. There's a doctor on the internet that a lot of you have probably heard of named Dr. Mercola. And he famously got terrible food poisoning with salmonella, which usually requires antibiotics because you get a nasty bloody diarrhea. And he completely fixed it using probiotics, just taking big doses. And you can do it yourself. It doesn't matter if you've got cramping, diarrhea, constipation. There's evidence that some probiotic has helped with that problem. You can be taking a probiotic that's not really helpful, but it's pretty hard to find a probiotic that would be harmful. And again, L-glutamine can help with that. So the bugs are really the heavy lifters in your gut. Really need them to be there and be healthy. They help keep that mucus layer that keeps those cells nice and healthy. They need to stay where they belong. They need to stay in the intestine and not be leaking out of it. And this is really the worst problem you can have in your gut, and you can have it and not know it. I first heard the term from a patient, leaky gut, about 25 years ago, and I remember asking a gastroenterologist, they said, there's no such thing. But I looked it up sometime later, and I found out that gastroenterologists call it intestinal permeability. They just call it something different. But having, if this fish doesn't know yet that it's in trouble, but if your intestines are actually springing leaks and things are going from the lining of your gut into that bloodstream, that is a significant problem. And this is a problem that you can have and not know about. And it's one of the ones that we kind of bend over backwards in Alzheimer's treatment to identify and to treat. And the way we try and identify as you have leaky gut is we do a special blood test for the molecules that are on the outside of the bacteria called lipopolysaccharides. It's a blood test that insurance doesn't pay for. But if you have lipopolysaccharides in your bloodstream coming from a leaky gut, they actually make your blood-brain barrier leaky, and they're very inflammatory in your body and in your brain. And if you have lipopolysaccharides, there's things you can do, and its name is on another slide. A supplement that helps reduce lipopolysaccharides. So some people who don't want to take the blood test, because it costs about $200 to test for lipopolysaccharides, they'll just want to take a course of this supplement called Megasporabiotic that helps reduce lipopolysaccharides in the bloodstream. And if they feel better, then we'll look farther for what kind of things might be making their gut leaky. The things we know that make the gut leaky are the popular NSAIDs, ibuprofen and Aleve. Those kind of medications can do it. Antibiotics can do it, make your gut leaky. You can have an adverse reaction to stress and get a leaky gut. And having the wrong kinds of bacteria in your digestive tract can make your gut leaky. Let's say a little bit more about that. But we talked about feeding your bacteria, and this is the best way you can feed the bacteria that you want to keep alive and healthy in your gut. Feeding it food that has not only nutrients in it themselves, lots of different colors, but has parts of it that you can't digest. You can't digest all that pepper skin, and so some of it is going to be digested by your gut bacteria. And this is a part of a healthy brain diet. In about 2 years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago, a study came out about the role of the healthy bacteria that you can feed in your gut and the brain. So they took 60 Alzheimer's patients and they tested their cognitive abilities, decided where they were, and 30 of them got a slurry of probiotics. 4 fairly common probiotics, but I haven't found a product that has all 4 of these in it. One of the ones I have at my office has a number of them in it, but not all 4. So 30 of the patients got this probiotic slurry that they took for 12 weeks, and the other group just had milk. And then they tested them cognitively again. And the patients that didn't get probiotics, their brain function deteriorated over 12 weeks, as you expect once you get into significant Alzheimer's disease. And all the patients on probiotics, their cognition improved statistically, significantly, and the only intervention they did was probiotics. And I'd happy to tell you what those bacteria are if you want to know. But if only one thing, I'm probably guilty of saying this 10 times over, but probably the most important thing I can say about keeping a happy belly and a healthy gut is your approach to how you eat. Is that you eat calmly, you chew all your food, and you allow your body time to digest it. And then what you can do in the background to keep your bacteria healthy. And if something happens and you have to recover from it, I was feeding my bacteria really well, but then I got a horrible case of diarrhea. Or then I had to take antibiotics because I got Lyme disease. And something that, or, where this has come up for me too, is someone who's never been well since their prep for a colonoscopy. They just had to clean out too much stuff. My recovery formula is always to find a probiotic that has good combinations of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. It would be ideal if that probiotic also included S. boulardii, which is a probiotic that's kind of a good yeast. You've heard people talk about having a yeast infection. We all have yeast. We all have a yeast infection. We're friendly with our yeast. But when it becomes problematic and it really is an infection, then you have too much of a bad kind of yeast, and this is a good kind of yeast. And then, as I mentioned before, Megasporobiotic, which will reduce the effects of having a leaky gut, which you can get if you clean out your colon too much. And while you're healing your gut, to make sure you get enough sleep, that you get proper exercise, enough but not too much, and that you have a good attitude. So it's, oops, where is that? So it's time to do this. So we do this every time, don't we? Because I need it. So I want you to inhale as that little diamond expands, and exhale as it contracts. And inhale as it expands, and exhale as it contracts. Now leave it up here for a little while. You keep breathing. This is very much like a little computer smartphone app called HeartMath. And this is part of Dr. Bredesen's routine protocol, is encourages his patients to do HeartMath. You get a little monitor that you wear on your ear, you plug it into your cell phone, and you breathe with the little diagram, and it watches your pulse relax with the expanding and contracting design. So however you do something like this, it's a good thing to do for your brain, for your belly and for your brain. So again, while you're keeping this whole digestive system healthy, yes, it does need to be clean, but you need to clean things carefully. And if something does go amiss, we want to know as much as we can about how things are supposed to be working and support that rather than take a pharmaceutical medication, and to feed your bugs well by eating that fiber-rich, color-rich diet. I think we've mentioned The End of Alzheimer's before, a book that's particularly, Dr. David Perlmutter wrote Grain Brain, which popularized the hazards of gluten relative to the brain, and that's part of this book, but he goes on at greater length about really what we're talking about tonight in terms of probiotics and their relationship with the brain. He doesn't talk so much about meditating and being calm. He should take that into account. That's our website for the office. Another really good book that I don't know if I've mentioned before, a friend of mine, Amy Berger, wrote a book called The Alzheimer's Antidote. And that is a good kind of do-it-yourself dietary guide for having a healthy brain. And then ApoE4info.com is a crowdsourced website where people who have the ApoE4 gene share information, hosted by Julie, who's in Dale Bredesen's book, who has 2 copies of the ApoE4 gene. So we're doing these talks again starting in 2019. I said the last Tuesday, but it's not. It's the 3rd Tuesday, right, Rachel?
It's the last.
It's the 3rd Tuesday. This is the last. So and in Ashland, we do the last Thursday of every other month, and I'm going to do something like this same talk in November. And we're a team there to help you in our team approach. And thank you all for coming tonight, and time for some questions.
What's the right amount of water to drink for a meal?
What's what?
The correct amount of water.
What's the correct amount of water to drink with a meal? That's a really good question, and I think it is a little individual depending on how much saliva you naturally make. So if I really take the time to chew my food, I make more saliva. The recommendation for how much water you should actually pour out to drink with your meal is somewhere between a half a cup and a whole cup, which is interesting to time because over the day, you're supposed to drink 6 or 8 cups of water. So you have to remember to drink water between your meal so that you're not drinking 2 cups of water with your meal, because that'll dilute your stomach acid and then it won't work so well. So a half a cup to a whole cup, depending on how much saliva you make.
Probiotics.
Probiotics.
Selection.
There is a wide selection of probiotics, you're right. And some of the ones that are very popular in the stores, like Align and Culturelle, are really good species of probiotics. And that's fine if you're in the store and you're getting them, or you're getting yogurt that might just have one kind of probiotic in it. But that's the problem with those products. They just have one kind of probiotic in them. So the ones we carry in the office tend to have mixtures that have lactobacillus, bifidobacterium, and maybe a few other things thrown in. One by one, we do know certain probiotics that are helpful with acne, irritable bowel, different things, and you can kind of make that one-to-one connection, but it's loose. So really the best knowledge we have is that eat that food so your bacteria that you have will live well, and take some probiotic most of the time, and hopefully one that has a varied amount of both kind and quantity of probiotics. There's no one answer about what's best. There's a prescription one that's very good, but I thought, oh great, I bet I should start using this prescription one. I bet it'll have those species I need that they used in the Alzheimer's study, but it doesn't. But it's a good one. It's called VSL, number 3. That's a good one. We have others. Donna?
When's the best time to take your supplements? Before, during, or after your meal?
That is a good question. When's the best time to take your supplements? Before, during, or after your meal? So the most important time to take them is when you'll most remember to take them. But it's probably best to take them, most of them, kind of during the meal.
How do we know if lectins affect our digestion?
How do we know if lectins affect our digestive system? And I would, that's the question that I get most often is, how do I know if I'm sensitive to gluten? Or how do I know if I'm sensitive to dairy? Or how do I know if I'm sensitive to lectins? And for those of you who don't know, there's a neurologist, I think he's a cardiologist, named Stephen Gundry, who pays a lot of attention to ApoE4s, more with heart risk, and he really believes we all eat way too many lectins. And I think the only way to know whether you're sensitive to any of those foods is to take them out for 6 weeks and then eat a lot of them and make no other changes in your diet. There isn't a good test for lectins. There are good tests for glutens, but a bad test is covered by your insurance. And if you fail that test, you've definitely got gluten sensitivity. But a good test costs about $300. But if you take it out and eat a lot of it, and you're sensitive to it, you'll be able to tell.
What are your thoughts about types of foods during the year that you should eat or shouldn't eat? Like, for example, nut butters during the winter, because that promotes dampness, and you don't want to have dampness during the weather.
So Lori's asking a question about, are there better times of the year to eat different foods and different foods you shouldn't eat at certain times? And other than believing we should eat mostly seasonally, that it's really kind of silly to try and get ripe tomatoes from Chile in the winter for about 10 reasons. I don't really have an answer to that. Do you have an opinion about that? Or does anyone have an opinion about seasonal choices of not obviously seasonal foods?
It seems that many acupuncturists have definite opinion about it, and I just wondered what you thought. I really don't know.
According to Ayurveda, which I studied in a little bit, according to that, you should just eat seasonally, and actually winter is one of the best times to eat nuts because it's warming, to the system, and if you're eating store-bought nut butters, which have sugar, salt, and other junk added to it, then it will be a problem, the dampness. But if you're just having soaked nuts, which will take out the lectins and the other undigestible products, and you either peel the almonds or soak the walnuts overnight and eat them, that's good.
So I don't know if everybody could hear it, but Dr. Garodi is a savant with Ayurvedic medicine, about which I know nothing really, but and saying that real nuts are actually very good to eat in the wintertime. And she repeated what I've said about nuts. Nuts are the reproductive organ of the tree. The nut tree would like you to eat the tree, irritate your gut, and excrete it intact and grow a new tree. If you actually want to digest the nut, it's really good to soak it for 24 hours and either eat it then or dehydrate it so that the anti-digestive components to the nut are taken away before you eat it. So just eating nuts, fresh nuts, is not dampening in the winter and wouldn't be a problem, but maybe commercial nut butters that have a lot of other things in them would be more problematic. So.
What's the relation between CBD oils and the brain? I've been researching this and I'm getting different responses.
The question is the relationship between CBD oils and the brain. So CBD oils, we do have cannabinoid receptors in our brain. We do have some genes which can give you some idea of how you're going to respond to either cannabinoids or tetrahydrocannabinoids, CBD or THC. And what I encourage people to do is to experiment, but to stay focused more on the CBDs. And I have patients who have great results with CBDs for anxiety and insomnia. Breeze Botanicals has a very nice combination of herbs and CBDs for sleep, valerian and something else in it. I think they're organic because they're Breeze, so they're big. And it's highly variable. So there are some children who've used CBDs for epilepsy control. There are people who claim that it's helped with cancer remission. And the research in cannabis in general has been so incredibly thwarted, we don't have an answer for your question, really. So we're lucky to have safe access to, you can go into the store. So the dose of CBD is probably about 1 to 2 milligrams for every 10 pounds. So I would take 15 to 30 milligrams of cannabinoid CBD to have an effect. Only your dose might be 1/10 of that or 3 times that. It really depends how sensitive you are. But that's the sort of ballpark I suggest to people that they're kind of aiming for and to give it a try. And it is. So if you have trouble sleeping, there are a lot of things you can take that make you unconscious for the night. And what we're always looking for is what can you take that actually enhances real sleep. Meaning you go to sleep, you almost come out, you go back down again, you have a nice sleep pattern. And cannabinoids are one of those things that can duplicate a regular sleep pattern. So I think they're safe for sleep. Dr. Bredesen encourages people to give them a try. They're consistent with his protocol.
Hi, I wanted to know, have in your experience as a doctor, you ever come across people like before even taking probiotics or this? What do you do with somebody if they have some weakened GI lining? And it seems to me, I guess basic anatomy and physiology. So like basically the wall of the GI tract is sometimes it's thin. There's damage, whatever, some damage for whatever reason. It seems like probiotics and enzymes would not be, I would say, as effective in the beginning. It seems like, what do you know about repair of the GI?
Right, so what do we do with patients whose gastrointestinal tract is kind of damaged? Can I just throw as many probiotics in that as I would throw in a healthy young football player? And probably not. But so each individual person, why their gastrointestinal tract is weak is different. Do they have are they just generally hormonally, is their thyroid low? Are they malnourished? Have they gone through a bad period of stress? Something that I've really, there's reasons to not take this all the time, but I've never had anybody have a bad response to taking L-glutamine. The dose does need to differ with different people, but it is the amino acid that helps the gastrointestinal tract reline itself if the lining is upset. All the lifestyle things about how we handle stress and getting enough sleep have a lot to do. And then with each individual person, you just have to see what happened to their gastrointestinal tract. That's probably the best way to try and make it strong again.
If I may ask one of this, I think much more specifically, I want to make sure that I have it really nailed down specifically. The membrane system or lining, doesn't that go down into our, I want to make sure, doesn't it go down into our GI tract? Am I correct?
Well, there's a single lining, and it's not a mucous membrane. So in the mouth, it's a mucous membrane, but what lines the gastrointestinal tract are a single layer of endothelial cells, which really are not the same as mucous membrane cells. They're much more, so in the mouth, the mucous membrane cells are not absorptive, they're not digestive, they're really more lubricating, and the endothelial cells down in your digestive tract are having a really complex interaction with the contents of your digestive tract. So they're much more complicated than a mucous membrane. And then as you're getting near the outside of various organ systems, it becomes mucous membrane-y again, genitourinary or gastrointestinal.
Right, and down into our throat is the membrane, the mucous membrane.
I don't really think it's a mucous membrane in your throat, Dr. Garodia. Don't you think it's endothelial cells lining your esophagus? Yeah.
Mucous membrane just finished around here.
Around here. Okay. Anatomy was a few years ago.
I thought it's minimal. So
Yeah. But, yeah, so. Thank you all for coming. We're going to all sort of hover and cluster a little bit. And I'll see you next year. That's right. And so, the day they say that,
I think you know it's wrong.
right? Well, you know, I never do much Right. But you know, you was listening to what you were talking about it for a lot of people. I mean, I love that.
it like a confession?
Yeah, right.
I don't want to
So he put me on that.
I got all these nasties in there, and I.
She said, so that's what I focused on. Prevention.
So you have, which is a great source of so they all start with sugar. And if you let the sugar become the digestion, what the health make it, then you just take it to the point where you get just barely, and still stand to drink it. It is, I think you should actually bring it to me for an example. That would be great. My nephew, I have a half sister, and her son, I say, was he's got a lunch effect in Salt Lake City. I am supposed to be yeah, so I think we do talk about that, and we will in next year. One of the talks will be about, Alzheimer's disease is referred to as type 3 diabetes.
Dennis,
Yeah. No, I'm not. This is the last one of this year. Okay. There is a Thursday. I am in Ashland. Okay, got it. On the Thursday.
I heard him tell me that.
Good to see you. Oh, good. I know. I'm actually really good. This is Bedford.
Hi. I had a fun experience.
no,
Sebastian with she said, "Oh, I know her, and I don't even have her." And I hadn't seen her for over 20 years myself. She was sitting in these two, and she had somebody's cat. No, we were next together. She called you Dr. Gold.
yeah, I'm looking forward to the 3 of us. So you guys
Yes.
Okay. I knew that.
I might be able to find a So do you remember people calling you that in medical school?
No, never.
Because she said you were always so either
Wow.
only you knew back then.
Yeah, really. And that's what's whatever happened. Somebody said, oh, I always knew she'd be a successful doctor. Why didn't somebody tell me?